And we start with the Fox News alert on the president holding a key meeting on infrastructure as we are now just minutes away from official release of his 2019 budget plan. Good morning to you. I'm John Scott.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you.
Yeah, why not? I'm Melissa Francis. The president's 2019 budget includes $1.5 trillion to fix the nation's crumbling infrastructure, with the president tweeting that after years of sacrificing blood and treasure overseas, it's now time to start investing in our own country. Right now, he is meeting with state and local officials who will play an important role in his plan.
This is a delivery on the president's promise to reinvest America's infrastructure. And the way that it'll work is that $200 billion in federal dollars will not be granted until state and local governments come forward with private investment to match it.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live with the story. John.
Melissa, good morning to you. The president meeting with state and local officials at this hour to lay out his infrastructure plan, tweeting about it this morning, saying, quote, "This will be a big week for infrastructure after so stupidly spending $7 trillion in the Middle East. It is now time to start investing in our country." Let's put some meat on the bones for you on the infrastructure program. It's $1.5 trillion in total, but the federal section of that will only be $200 billion. That's for seed money and loans. The White House saying that one federal dollar in some programs generates $40 in project dollars. There's also going to be a $50 billion rural infrastructure plan that's block grants to governors, streamlined permitting process to 2 years, which would involve having one agency take the lead in all of the permitting to cut a lot of the red tape. And there will be changes to trade education and licensing so that if you're an electrician and you're licensed in, say, Washington State, you'll be able to go to Florida and work as well. There's been some criticism that this really shifts the burden in terms of getting the infrastructure dollars to the states. But the White House Legislative Director Mark Short a little while ago said, no, that's not the way the plan works. Listen here.
I'm not so sure it's shifting the burden. I think what we're giving is states and local communities the opportunity to leverage federal dollars to invest in the projects that the federal government has not been able to do for years. I mean, the reason the infrastructure is crumbling is because the bureaucracy here doesn't enable us actually to move forward. So what we're going to do is to empower the states and localities to use some federal dollars to match it and to reinvest in their communities.
Let's take a look at some of the other measures in the budget that will be released, as you said, at 11:30 this morning. It increases military spending over 2 years by $300 billion. That's the deal that was agreed to last week in Congress. $23 billion additional for border security, which includes hiring 2,750 Border Patrol agents, and $18 billion over 2 years for the wall. It also includes $13 billion to fight the opioid epidemic and plans to cut domestic spending by $3 trillion in 10 years, which, as you can imagine, for many people in Congress is a little bit controversial. The White House today also still explaining the circumstances surrounding the departure last week of the staff secretary, Rob Porter, over allegations from two of his ex-wives of domestic abuse. The president didn't seem to help the situation at all when he tweeted over the weekend, quote, "People's lives are being shattered and destroyed by a mere allegation. Some are true and some are false. Some are old and some are new. There is no recovery for someone falsely accused. Life and career are gone. Is there no such thing any longer as due process?" White House officials tell Fox News that the White House counsel, Don McGahn, knew about some of the allegations as far back as November. He learned about them from Porter himself, but that Porter downplayed them, according to White House sources, saying that his ex-wives were saying things about him in FBI interviews for his background check, but it was nothing serious. When that photograph of Colby Holderness, his first ex-wife with the black eye, came out, completely changed the equation. Mark Short with the White House reaction this morning. Listen here.
I think that the president, like all of us, were saddened and surprised by the revelations that came forward last week. Rob was a friend to many of us. He did a great job here inside the building. But we can have zero tolerance for domestic abuse and violence against women. And I think the president, in my conversation with him, has been very clear about that as well.
And one other piece of business here at the White House is saying it is looking forward to being able to release that Democratic memo on alleged FISA abuses, the rebuttal to the Republican memo that was released more than a week ago. Adam Schiff, the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee, saying that he will be happy to take his memo to the FBI for the appropriate redactions. Of course, last week, the White House refused to release that, saying that there was too much information about sources and methods for that to go public. Melissa?
John Roberts, lots to keep tabs on there. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's dig into all of this more now with John Bussey, associate editor of the Wall Street Journal. So the president's budget is just about out. I mean, what Congress did last week kind of supplants it anyway, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. President's budgets tend to be wish lists. This is what I'd like to do. This is what my agenda looks like. Infrastructure is pretty popular. That goes down well with a lot of Democrats and Republicans. The big issue is whether or not they're going to find the money for it. Where's the funding going to come from? The deal that they brokered last week and that the president signed busts the budget. There's going to be hundreds of billions of dollars of additional deficits as a result of the spending plan there. So he's going to have a hard time raising the dollars for this. One area where he might be able to be successful and probably would get some support from the states as well is in this notion of coordinating regulation and permitting to make it just easier to undertake big projects.
But it's also the case that the president is saying, look, the budget that Congress passed, we don't have to spend all that money. And he's saying, you're going to see in my budget that I'm going to cut some domestic programs or suggest cuts to domestic programs.
Right. So whose ox is going to get gored in all of this? A lot of deals were made. A lot of money was thrown into this budget deal that was passed last week just to get everybody on board and to get something through. So are we going to reopen all of those debates over what gets spent and what doesn't to just get infrastructure through? Is defense going to get cut or entitlements going to get cut? What's going to get cut? Jerry Seib, our Washington executive editor, has a very good video on this on WSJ.com. And the big issue is, where is all the money going to come from?
Well, maybe the federal printing presses, unfortunately.
Right.
Let's talk about the battle of the dueling memos. Congressman Devin Nunes of California, who is the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, says he wants to see that Democrat memo come out. Listen here.
We actually want the Democratic memo out. We think it's ridiculous on the face of it. We think it's very political about how they attack myself. They attack Chairman Gowdy. They turn Carter Page into some super secret Russian spy. They talk about how Christopher Steele is a really, really good source when we know that he lied to the FBI.
So he's seen the Democrats' version of the memo. Obviously, the rest of us have not. But isn't it kind of disingenuous? Now he's saying, I want to take that back to the FBI and let them strike the things that shouldn't be in there for national security purposes.
Yeah. So this has been politicized by Nunes, right? He has been very much a proponent of Donald Trump. The effort here is to kind of muddy the waters to make people suspect of the FBI. Now, why is that? Because the FBI is undertaking an investigation into collusion with Russia and obstruction of justice that involves the presidency. So if you get out in front of that and make people question the veracity of the FBI, then you've done your job. So Nunes arguably has already done that. There's muddied water. The Democrats will now seek to unmuddy that water. And these two memos will speak to constituencies who are following this very closely. But if you take one step further back from that, it is less significant because the Russia investigation continues to move forward. At some point, we will hear from Mr. Mueller. Was there obstruction of justice? Was there not? Was there collusion with Russia? Was there not? And the memos will be a sideshow in all of this.
And then there's the Rob Porter matter, a guy whose name most people didn't know, but suddenly his boss, John Kelly, the chief of staff, is in some real hot water in this White House.
And I think that's the right focus to have on this, which is what is going to happen to John Kelly. Kelly, again, whatever your politics, whether you agree with him or you don't agree with him, has brought a measure of discipline to a very undisciplined White House. He's been the guy who says, look, stuff's got to come through me. People just can't walk into the Oval Office and start up conversations with the president. We need to prioritize the president's day to give him time to think about issues that need to be resolved. So he's been the gatekeeper, somebody who has brought a measure of discipline. If this problem now with who knew about Porter, who knew about the allegations, when did they know about them, why wasn't something done, how does that affect the security, the temporary security clearance that he continued to have, was that appropriate? If those issues now bring down John Kelly, the question then is, where does the next generation of parental supervision for the White House come from?
Yeah, and he's getting criticized from both sides of the aisle.
He is indeed.
It's fascinating.
He is indeed.
Thanks very much for being with
Pleasure.
us. John Bussey from the Wall Street Journal. Melissa.
Is a member of Kim Jong-un's family stealing the show at the Winter Olympics? That's what many in the mainstream media are saying. What our media panel says the press should be paying attention to. Also, the immigration debate heads to the Senate floor today. Is there room for comprehensive reform?
Voters don't trust that Washington's going to do the right thing on immigration, and they're tired of this. Oh, we'll give some kind of amnesty to folks who came here illegally, and we promise we'll do something to secure the border. They're sick of that play.
Funeral services are underway for Indianapolis Colts linebacker Edwin Jackson. The Atlanta native was killed last week along with his Uber driver when a suspected drunk driver living in the U.S. illegally struck and killed them on a highway. Family members are asking anyone who wishes to honor Edwin's life to donate to the Edwin Jackson 53 Foundation. The foundation was started by the 26-year-old to help empower athletes and young kids.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is fulfilling his promise. An open-ended debate on immigration reform begins today in the Senate. The goal, a bipartisan bill. But after so many attempts have stalled, is that really possible? Joining me now is Monique Presley, Democratic commentator and trial attorney. Also, Kevin McCullough, syndicated radio show host for Salem Media. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Monica, did the Republicans get credit for fulfilling their promise, saying we're going to have a big debate on this? And here we go.
Sure. If it's credit that they need in order to get things moving, then finally Senator McConnell is at least holding to his word to do what Congress is supposed to do, have open, full-throated debate. So I am hoping that that's what is about to happen, and that then this Congress that hasn't been able to get much done thus far will actually get to a finish line so that the people who need help the most can get it.
Kevin, what do you think about that? I mean, the American people are used to these guys debating and getting out there and talking and talking and talking and talking, but they want to see results.
No doubt. And I think that, as Monique just said, that Senator McConnell is keeping to his word. I think you're going to see a really robust, open discussion from both sides. The interesting thing about this issue is that you have caucus groups in both parties that oppose the other portion of their own party.
Right.
So you've got people in the Republican and Democratic parties that are pro almost complete full amnesty, and then you've got people in both parties that have hesitation about that and want to see some sort of limits to it, and then you've got other people that are like, and all immigration completely. I think if you get some form of protection for the Dreamers and you get beefed up border security, both issues rank about 84% popularity with the American public, you're going to come out pretty good. And I think that that's what we're going to get at the end of next couple of weeks.
The White House Deputy Press Secretary, was out a short time ago saying something sort of similar. I mean, really, there's something for everyone to love and everyone to hate, but here's where the White House is right now.
It's a very encouraging start to the day because everything in the president's framework is laid out in this bill. And it's not just a lasting solution for DACA. It is the things you mentioned. You have to build a wall. And the secret is walls work.
Monique, is there room for a compromise with everybody accepting what they like and some of what they hate?
No, and to be clear, Kevin is being very generous to his own party, and I understand why. But there's nobody on the Democratic side of the House or the Senate who is interested in no protection for these dreamers. And that is exactly what the Freedom Caucus is advocating.
That's not what I
so
said.
it's the Republican Party who needs to do the work.
I'm not sure if Monica heard me either, because
it's Monique.
Said, Monique, pardon me, forgive me, but I said, is there room for a compromise with both sides liking something and hating something? She said no. Do you think there's no room for a compromise, Kevin?
I patently didn't say that there's anybody in the Democratic Party that doesn't want to give protection to Dreamers. I said there are some on all sides of this issue in both parties, and that's true. You've got Trump-leaning states that the president carried, but that have Democratic senators that have open seats this year in November. And this is going to be an issue, and this debate is going to be something that both sides will use to try to figure out who's going to win. The problem is neither party has a unanimous stance on what immigration reform should look like. And so really the best thing for the country is that we're, just what you said, Melissa, everyone's going to get a little something that they want, and everybody's going to give up something.
But the one thing that we can't give up is protection for dreamers, and that is the problem that I'm trying to highlight within the Republican Party.
That's
that
not
the president's
true,
promised the
But
protection.
Monique, nobody's saying no protection for dreamers. I mean, that's
actually
not
the Freedom Caucus is saying that.
The president offered 3 times as many a road to what seems like amnesty to some than President Obama did. I mean, there's portions on the Democrat side that say no funding for the wall. There's portions on the Republican side that say don't let anyone have a road to amnesty. And neither of those extremes, it seems like, are going to win. There's going to have to be some compromise in the middle. Monique.
Yes, I believe that there needs to be. The difficulty here that I am trying my best to highlight is that the Republican Party is in control of the entire machine at this point. So if the Speaker Ryan, is saying, I'm not going to even debate anything unless the president is going to be willing to sign it, and he has no clue what the president is actually going to be willing to sign.
That's not
then
true. He laid out
all
at
of
the
the
beginning, the
problems
president
are on
laid out
that
exactly
side.
what he would sign, and the Republicans are not in full control because
Maybe
basic
call
civics
Speaker
tell
Ryan.
you they don't have all the votes they need in the Senate, so they're not in total control, and we do know what the president would sign. Kevin, real quick, last word, and we got to go.
Melissa, it's important to point out that Speaker Ryan is in the House, and the debate begins today in the Senate.
Okay.
Mitch McConnell's keeping his word. Let's see what happens from here.
All right, thanks to both of you. John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Puerto Rico cannot seem to catch a break, with parts of that island plunged once again into darkness, now months after the hurricane. What happened? I'll tell you more about that next. Plus, the North Korean dictator's little sister stealing the show at the Winter Olympics, if you read the headlines. But is the media coverage, I should say, giving the rogue nation publicity that money cannot buy? Our panel with their thoughts. Just in on the Olympics, with critics slamming many members of the media for fawning over the sister of North Korea's ruler. The mysterious young woman hijacking all of the attention at the Winter Games. Some outlets calling her the Ivanka Trump of North Korea. Here's a sample of the headlines. But are the media ignoring a massive human rights issue? Joining us now, Joe Concha, media reporter for The Hill. Judy Miller is Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter, author, and Fox News contributor. Are you surprised, Judy, at the headlines that Kim's little sister is getting?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, it's kind of predictable. She's the shiny new object in the atmosphere. But let me tell you, if you just go beyond those headlines, you get some fantastic reporting about what a monstrous regime this is, about the extent to which North Korea starves, jails, and tortures its own people. You get terrific reporting on the 30,000 North Koreans who have defected to the South. But yes, this is an Olympics, John. This is, this is show, and they are definitely part of the show. This is lipstick diplomacy, as Suki Kim called it. Terrific op-ed piece in the New York Times, and it will be very superficial and it won't last.
If the reporting is good, though, why not reflect some of that in the headlines?
That's been the problem, right? And more people, they scroll through their phones and they see a headline and a blurb. They won't bother to read the story, right? It's fast food journalism now these days, both in terms of supply and demand. I hate to say it, but let's be clear. She's not the shiny new object. You know her official title? This is the most insane thing I've ever heard. She is the director of the Department of Propaganda and Agitation. All right. The last part, there's a Henry Youngman joke, I'm sure, in there
the
somewhere.
DPA.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But to your point, in terms of what's going on in North Korea, 18 million people are starving, according to a UN report in 2017.
Some of them are trying to eat dirt to avoid from starving.
I mean, that's insane, right? 120,000 people in work camps. And you could go on in terms of the number of people that have been killed under this regime. And to give a headline like that without any context, that has been the danger here. And it's why critics, not just conservative critics, but what I saw on social media all over the place, left and right, are slamming not just the New York Times, CNN, Reuters, ABC, NBC. You could go on and on. This is across the board of glamorizing somebody like this who, again, runs propaganda and couldn't ask for any better press if she wanted it from the U.S. media.
I think the thing that the American media really need to concentrate on, and I think to a certain extent they have, and that is to what extent these people are really helping Kim Jong-un, the brutal dictator of North Korea, achieve his goal, which is to drive a wedge between the United States and South Korea, because the South Korean president, President Moon, whom I went to see when I was in South Korea last fall, was actually very much in favor of Sunshine Policy, getting the two Koreas together. This is back to the future again. It's not going to work, but it's going to complicate American diplomacy.
But what people forget, I thought after President Trump's fire and fury comments about North Korea and his rhetoric was going to be dangerous and there'd be no way there could ever be peace between North Korea and South Korea, let alone they'd ever meet. Well, look at the results now. Again, North Korea, it would be impossible to imagine them sending a delegation to the Olympics. And now they're actually talking, and maybe there is a breakthrough. So was Trump wrong in that situation with his rhetoric by not following the three previous presidents before him in terms of measured language? Bottom line on this in terms of media coverage, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's the old ancient proverb, right? And a lot of Trump supporters see the U.S. media taking the side of North Korea over the U.S., the administration, Mike Pence, because the enemy of the enemy is my friend.
Interesting that Kim Jong-un probably sent the one person he knew would not defect from his government.
Well, we saw what happened to her brother, right?
22 athletes, 300, quote, cheerleaders chosen from the elite of the country. They probably have only smaller worms in their system.
And family members very worried back home that they will defect because we know what happens to them when that happens.
Right.
Judy Miller, Joe Concha.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa.
The Trump administration rolling out its new budget plan, and it includes huge spending increases for the military, how it could give the U.S. more of an advantage over our two nearest competitors in terms of the military. We're going to break it all down ahead. Plus, a possible breakthrough resulting from Vice President Mike Pence's Olympic visit last week. Is the U.S. ready to hold talks with North Korea?
As we've said for some time, it's really up to the North Koreans to decide when they're ready to engage with us in a sincere way, a meaningful way. They know what has to be on the table for conversations.
Vice President Mike Pence says the U.S. is open to a discussion with North Korea after his stay in Seoul, South Korea last week. This comes after talks between South Korea's president and the sister of North Korea's leader during the Olympics. It was the topic of our media segment just now. Greg Palka live in Seoul with more. Greg?
Hi, John. Yes, after Korean Olympic diplomacy in full swing, some possible signs of movements towards easing the tension here on this peninsula. In a Washington Post interview, Vice President Pence reportedly saying that talks between North and South Korea, even between the North and the U.S., could be possible. This following the assurance, he says, that he got from South Korean President Moon that pressure would be maintained on North Korea to rid that country of its nukes and its missiles. This followed a virtual love fest between Moon and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister. They were together a total of 4 times over the weekend, including at a concert Sunday night. She extended an invitation to Moon to come to Pyongyang for a summit. Remember, the Vice President had a close but cool encounter with Kim Yo-chung at Friday's opening ceremony to the Games. Athletes from the North are participating in the Olympics with South Korean athletes. Finally, Sunday night also saw a protest here in Seoul against the South's efforts to turn this Games into the Peace Olympics. It was small, but it was symbolic, John, of a larger number of people in this country, old and young, who are a little bit cautious about getting too close to North Korea. Our own experts say that a possible shift by the vice president on talks could be important, but we're seeing other Trump administration officials today already backing off that line. Tough road to peace here. Back to you.
You seem to be a long way away. Greg Palkot. Greg, thank you.
Fox News alert for you now. The White House just releasing the president's budget plan. It proposes over $700 billion for the Pentagon. And next year, it would rise to $716 billion, allowing for more money to be spent on troops, training, ships, and hardware. It's not only the largest budget the Pentagon has ever seen, but also a far bigger military budget than either China's or Russia's. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis expressing support for the new plan yesterday.
I am very confident that what the Congress has now done and the President is going to allocate to us in the budget is what we need to bring us back to a position of primacy.
Indiana Congressman Jim Banks sits on the House Armed Services Committee. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. It's only an outline and a proposal from the president. It's appropriations that actually hands out money, but this is a lot of money. What do you think?
Well, it's a lot of money in the right places. When we look at what's happened to our military since 2010, a nearly 20% cut in funding to our troops, to our military, to our defense priorities. This president and administration deserves a lot of credit for making that the priority in the fiscal year 2019 budget. So I largely applaud the priorities that